Welcoming to Knocking Doors Down, we got Jaime Bennington and Austin Gold. How are you, gentlemen?
Good.
Doing great.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, of course, we're going to be talking about the film you guys worked on together at Chant, but we want to obviously really highlight mental health, some areas of addiction and stuff like that. And well, why don't we jump in a little bit to why this project was so important for you to put together, Jaime? I mean, you're really out there, paving your own path, and it's really compelling stuff.
Thank you. I get weirded out saying I'm a pioneer, so I'm glad to hear somebody else say that. No, but the film is really important to me, all jokes aside, because I struggle with, and I didn't know this until recently, but I'm undiagnosed borderline personality disorder, which is a trauma-based anxiety disorder. And when I used to just binge read Stephen King. Like, that's just what would happen. I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. I think I did the math. I've read like something like 40 novels or something like that. And so this one thing just happened to get my attention. I was listening to an audiobook of it, and the presentation of it was so interesting. The film is based off of a poem called Paranoid a Chant, which is only 100 lines long. And I just expanded it and added my experience to it. But it was really important for me to make something realistic in terms of the way it represented a certain condition or the topics of mental health and mental illness, not just for myself, but for everybody else. I didn't want to make something that would put somebody, say, with paranoid schizophrenia in a bad light, because that's my responsibility as an artist, is to avoid doing that, to be honest. And that's really where the idea came from, is just, getting my experience out there, being honest with people about certain things, and also changing the way that film and television thinks about and depicts mental conditions. Yeah. I find that they're a little lackluster.
They are, or we've seen them very much as the comedic relief oftentimes.
I always bring up the number 23, which is a Jim Carrey movie, and also a decidedly odd Jim Carrey movie, because everything else Jim does is so, awakened. It's kind of like, I make the reference that it's like a sexy joke. Like, it's cool to be crazy, Sure. I think by the end of the film, it's a very confusing film, because it kind of gives off this almost fetishized view of mental illness and the awareness of mental health. And that was the exact opposite of what I wanted to do. And I say it's an odd Jim Carrey thing because Jim is known for doing things that are not fetishized at all, like Eternal Sunshine, or I bring up Horton Hears a Who, which is a classic. But yeah, there's a weird fetishizing of these kinds of things where people are like, yeah, it's super cool to be like sick, like, ooh, I have problems, that makes me interesting, which is a weird approach. I think anybody going through it, or even you brought up addiction, struggling with addiction or anything like that, like, it's not really sexy. Having a condition of any sort.
No, we've definitely done that within society of a lot of things, and I know growing up in the generation I did, that my heroes, no wonder I kind of fell to things. Of course, I had addiction in my family as well, especially with my father, and going through that. But I was like, all right, Nikki Sixx is my hero. That guy can pound a bottle of whiskey on stage. Fuck,
yeah,
he
can.
That too, which of course, now sober, thank goodness. But it's like, hey, I did it. I did, like we were talking prior to recording the radio career. So there was many rock stars that I, hanging out with resulted in hangovers the next day or whatever. So, it's.
I mean, what's rock and roll besides rock and roll and booze and some coke? I mean, come on, but you can't have rock and roll without those things.
Ironically, now you can. Mikey and I joke about that now. He's a big skateboard aficionado, and like all the skateboarders are sober.
They're all sober now. And going back real quick to the mental health and anxiety, I have crazy anxiety all the time. Literally not one day goes by where I don't have it, and there's nothing.
Really?
There's nothing sexy.
No, there's nothing sexy, isn't it? It's kind of horrible, right?
Oh, dude, it's horrible. And it's every day, Jamie. It's every fucking day, like something, or it's almost like you don't want it to happen. So
Yeah.
that's all that's on my mind is for it
Yeah,
to
it makes it happen, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Madness breeds madness. It's a disease, you know. Even anxiety is, you know, it's a imbalance. And I was talking to you about that earlier. It's like because I suffer with a lot of addiction in my family.
Mhm.
And I was asked if I ever succumbed to like substance abuse, and I said no, because I would focus so hard on like not being an addict that I would psych myself out, and I would give myself panic attacks, and I couldn't even smoke weed for like 20 years because I was just like it would create my own discomfort to the point where I was like literally giving myself seizures, which is like the craziest thing ever. Yeah. I could explain that, but
please.
Yeah.
No, you can't open that.
I know, right? I gave myself like mini seizures. It was super bizarre, and I thought forever I was allergic to pot, and I thought I would just like freak out because I was having like an allergic reaction, you know. And basically I would smoke, and then I would have such bad anxiety attacks, which when I get anxious or I have like attacks, my hand trembles.
Oh,
or I'll start like doing this, like just rubbing my palm or like pulling on my clothes. I won't pick my nail buds, but some people do, or like their what do you call those things? This part of your nail, where people rip it off, your cuticle. Yeah. Everybody expresses it differently, but that's mine. And so when I would get super stressed out and I'd smoke and I'd just be like super high, I would start to like twitch involuntarily, and like I wouldn't have control over that. And essentially it equated to like mini seizures. It was horrible. I equated it to being like a fish out of water.
Mm-hmm.
And I would throw up and get dizzy and all this crazy shit. And it's literally all psychological, because once I started
while high, all of this was while high. Okay.
While I was high. And I thought, well, shit, weed's horrible, you know, I can't smoke this garbage. And then I would keep doing it because I was like, all my friends would be like, well, dude, you know, like weed doesn't do that to you. And it turns out they're right. Weed does not do that to you. You do that to you.
Right.
And it's a long road to figuring that out, because it's a lot of trial and error. But the second I started figuring myself out and realizing I had things to deal with, that stuff stopped pretty quickly.
Sure.
Which is mind over matter is real. So.
Well, and that's a lot of that impact of just doing the work. But at first you have to go through some sort of recognition and diagnosis or whatever it is of trauma. Sounding from, I mean, you know, obviously with your dad, Chester, you know, his addiction highlighted, but you said other family members. So what was it? Mom, siblings,
all my parents,
aunts, uncles?
Let's see, hold on. My family is a web of things. My first stepfather was an alcoholic. My mom struggled with hard drugs, and then my other parents, I have my like definition of family is like the people that support you. So I call a lot of people by titles that people wouldn't typically get called by. My sister is my cousin, but we're not related. My cousin's my sister, but she's from a whole different family. Two different cousins. See, there's a confusion already. But yeah, I dealt like every aspect of my life was just filled with addiction. I lived in Glendale, Arizona, which was like, you know, the meth capital of Arizona. And I dealt with a lot of that. So, you know, I think every one of my role models dealt with something. You know, my dad struggled with alcohol and marijuana, even though marijuana is not addictive. My mom was addicted to meth. My other dad was an alcoholic, you know, those kinds of things. So I was like, it was just one of those things where I saw how it affected people, and I was like, I don't want to be that. But I let it consume me instead of using it to better myself. So, you know, lessons learned.
I can only imagine that. Was there a lot of this stuff that occurred? Because I'm not sure at what point your folks split up. So was that a traumatic thing to endure, and then kind of, you know, it's a crazy lifestyle of being a child of divorce, period. I see it for my kids.
Oh, though they were never married.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So my mom and my dad were high school sweethearts. Would you believe it? How romantic.
Howard.
And they had a really tortured relationship, and they ended up my dad ended up, you know, leaving to go do his band, and then my mom stayed home, and she just didn't tell him she was pregnant. So
Oh,
I didn't meet my
shit.
dad till I was 8. Literally the first time I ever met my dad, I had no idea what he looked like. I had no idea who he was. The first time I saw him, he opened the door and he had the lip piercing
Yeah.
and the bleached tips and the black glasses, you know, before he went full rock star and got LASIK. And he had that leather jacket he used to wear all the time. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was
Oh,
a
yeah.
black leather jacket, and he had this but like he opens the door and he just seems so aggressive, and then he's like, "Oh my God, you're so cool. I love you. Like, I'm such a nice guy." And it really is that kind of warmth. So it was very confusing. I'd never seen anything like that in my life.
How old
But
were you when that occurred?
about 8.
Oh, wow.
So he didn't know about you either? Like he split and your mom never
No,
told
he
you
didn't.
pregnant. So
Yeah, he
he
didn't
also
know.
found out about you when you were 8?
Well, it's up for debate, because some people who I won't name because I'm smarter than that. They say that they tried from the moment I was born, and then others say that they just didn't know. So
Gotcha.
it's, who knows. My childhood is like a box of crayons if you left them in the sun too long, and like you can tell like some, like, oh, that might be yellow, and then other colors you're like, what the fuck is that's not even a color. So I can't exactly linearize things the way that I would like to.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't meet him till I was 8. A lot of people don't know that,
Yeah.
or they're starting to know that.
Yeah, that I did that really affect you much as a kid? Did you think, oh, you know, I'm out of the box, you know, my life is a little abnormal? I know for me, I felt like it with my childhood, it was like, yeah, something's really off here. And I didn't really know my dad's addictions until he, you know, I was like 15, 16 years old, that there was any acknowledgement of it.
Yeah.
Was that always kind of there, an outsider just not really fitting in? Did you start to have some of those anxieties early on in life?
I think I had the anxieties, like I expressed it outwardly, but I had no idea what an addiction was because I had dealt with people who normalized it. So like I had a lot of people who were drinking recreationally, but like also like definitely an alcoholic, you know, who considered a tall boy 1 can, you know, that kind of stuff, that kind of stuff, where you're like, I don't know if it's a matter of me not understanding like that there were addictions, because I definitely understood that, but I didn't understand the term addiction, I don't think, because I look at it this way. I didn't know I struggled from severe panic, depression, this BPD, until I was 23. I stumbled on it on my own. Actually, I stumbled across it officially when I was 24, and I came to the understanding that I needed to work on myself when I was 22, 23. So, and that was all on accident. So, you know, for me to understand that people had issues was very difficult. I didn't really understand what was going on most of the time.
Well, yeah, we're not even, our brain's not even reaching maturity until really around
not
that
even
age.
close.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Sometimes I'm still 13 years old in my emotional literacy. I got a lot of catching up to do.
Welcome to the club. So what
Austin
was it?
knows.
Yeah, definitely.
And why do you say that, Austin?
Well, I just, I mean, with the way that Jaime professes everything, he's very open, and it just kind of all goes out, and
no filters.
You sometimes have, right,
Yeah.
and you learn to appreciate it because, you know, I have a grandfather who he's around 89 right now, and
it's incredible.
It reminds me of that in some way, where it's just the constant freedom to say whatever and to walk into any sort of area and say, oh, you know, this is what we're doing, this is who I am, and really anybody's there to like lend an ear for it, because it's always something, you know, and that's kind of what life's all about in some ways, you know, like you gotta hear that person out at some aspects rather than to just completely.
Austin's seen me grow. I've known Austin for about how long would you say exactly? Like a year and a half, 2 years now.
I moved to LA 2 years ago as of March, so probably this we would have actually met.
Yeah, so we've known each other for about 2 years, and I have changed so much, and I've dealt with so much, and he's been like in the sidelines, just like dealing with me as I'm learning to like conversate with people. So he's had some interesting conversations with me. Some where I just literally don't know what the fuck's going on, and I'm just totally obtuse to the fact that I'm being difficult or like, hurting someone's feelings. Other ones I'm like, I don't care, I'm being honest, which is never like a good excuse, like you got to acknowledge that like maybe you're a bit harsh, so. But it's funny because I talk about growing and whatever, and not knowing things, and Austin's definitely been a part of the not knowing part to some degree, especially working with me, as a director. So
all right. Well, I can only imagine in an artistic setting where you're trying to get something across, and sometimes a fucking filter just doesn't have a place or something, and
Yeah, I think a lot of those conversations are delved into that. Like, I think more so Jamie and I have had those experiences where we're like, man, I don't know if we're connecting here on some things, but when it comes down to it, the full vibe is like, we're here to do this thing, and we both have the same accomplishments and goals that we want to make, to where it just feels more right. And if you have that passion that you lend itself to somebody else, and kind of saying like, take a step back and really just have fun with it and enjoy the process of this thing that we call art, and I just kind of walked into it. He actually approached me, and I've just been super grateful ever since. And the conversations we've had have been so introspective, and I've learned a lot as well. Like, it's not that, we both were kind of having unknown answers and questions that might not have come up 2 years ago. No question.
Yeah,
and that's just how life is.
That's just when you grow, right?
Yeah, that's just life in general.
Things change. Yeah, and because I remember like just like being the guy on set too, who's like trying to include everybody, but also being so, with the Chant specifically, being so like, well, this is also like a vision, like there are certain things that are unmovable. Like, I need you to act this way, and or be this way, or see it this way. And some people, sometimes it comes off as like, fuck you, which is not at all what it is. I've had to explain that a couple of times, not to just Austin, to like my DP or editor or things like that. Like, I'm lucky. We had an editor who I was just like, I'd freak out and just be like, fuck, I'm gonna freak out. I can't. And he'd be like, dude, watch. And you push a button and fix something and that I was concerned about. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Yeah. sorry. I'm 24 and I'm just learning how to deal with my emotions. So if you could just be kind to me, thank you.
So what was it that occurred around that 22, 23 that led you to more of an exploring?
My dad died. my dad died by suicide, which is that's the way the vocabulary has changed, for example, in mental health, as long as with the mentality or the perception of mental health has changed. We don't apply commit to a suicide because it's actually a criminal act to kill yourself. I don't know if you know that. So if you die and you kill yourself, they put like a criminal mark on your death certificate and shit like that, which is like ridiculous. Yeah. I think it states it depends, but they definitely treat it as a crime because you killed somebody, which is like super backwards. But the thing about the language is that it implies a certain agency or a certain kind of choice, I guess, which if like, again, I said, if you know about conditions of any sort, or if you experience one of yourself, or you're dealing with addiction or things like that, it's not sexy. You also know it's not a choice. If it were a choice, you just stop. It wouldn't be an addiction. It wouldn't be a condition. If it was a choice, I'd go, well, I'm not nervous anymore. I don't have panic, so I'm not going to panic anymore. You know how many times I've said that to myself? It doesn't work.
Gosh, what I would give for it to be a choice and never have to deal with this again.
Right. Amazing, right? Gosh. If there's an off switch, are you fucking kidding me?
Seriously.
I've tried all those things.
And you'll get the people who don't understand, like, well, dude, just relax. And I'm like, oh, okay, relax. Fuck. Why didn't I think of that? All right. I'll just relax. Anxiety's gone. Must have been at the top of your fucking class.
I'll manifest that this second just like I would, $5 million. Boom, done. Thanks. You know, it's like,
no, and the thing is like, especially when I met my partner, I had to very seriously be like, you know, because when I have my episodes, I get really loud, and I'm not yelling though. Like it's not my intention to like belittle you or scream at you or whatever. It's like, that's just what I'm capable of. I don't have like anything else. I'm at 11 and I stay at 11. And then when it's over, I'm at 0. And that's it. There's no intermediate. And for some people that's different. I have to tell them, you know, I'm not yelling at you. I'm not doing this. And it's not my choice. Like if it was my choice, I wouldn't treat you like this at all, but I don't have a choice in that. I freak the fuck out and I freak out and I have to deal with it. So I remain accountable, but I do things that I regret sometimes. And I think everybody in any situation that I just described goes through those moments. And the thing is too, is like, when you say something like, well, they committed suicide, it's like, okay, so you're telling me that my dad, for example, had the desire to leave his family, go to his room, and then hang himself. You're like, oh shit. That seems like a really crazy choice, you know? Yeah. He was home for like 12 hours. I don't think things slip that fast, except for they do, right? And if it were a choice, he would choose for it to not slip that fast. But sometimes being alone for just a little bit, especially if you're not coping correctly, it does take less than 12 hours for you to freak the fuck out. And if you're alone and you're somebody, I believe my dad probably had something like BPD or something like that, with my experiences with him. That it doesn't take much to just hate yourself and then jump into it and really punish yourself for it. So it could have been something, it could have been anything. I'm not going to speculate on what the cause was because I don't know. But, you know, to say like he chose that is like saying that he chose to react to something. You know, people don't choose to react unless you're like really into meditation or something where you're conditioned to the point where you can choose not to react. That's different, but most people don't have that conditioning. So, you know, reactions are exactly that. They're off the cuff. They're like, all right, well, that happened. Now I'm interacting with it, and I didn't think about it. And so when you change the language, like died by, you take it away from them, that agency. It's more of like you succumb to a moment of irrationality instead of a moment of choice, which is wholly different. But you know, one of the things I'll say, which I've always said, is that I've never criticized my father for ever doing what he did, because I know how hard it is to commit to something at all. And I know he committed to the recovery route for so many years, you know, and it wasn't working for whatever reason. And so I was never upset with him for dying or going out the way he did. I was upset for the way he treated people when he was here, you know, and that to me was where I started making the connection for myself. Was like, I was ignoring the grief because I didn't want to give what I thought at the time was maybe like pity towards somebody who was cruel to me because they chose not to be aware of their cruelness, or that's the way I saw it at the time.
Absolutely.
And I kind of just blocked the grief out, and I was like, I don't need to deal with that. Whatever the fuck. I don't care. My dad's dead. Who gives a shit? Like that kind of mentality, which I think a lot of people go through naturally. Even if they did love the person and they did have a good relationship, they're still like, well, fuck that guy, you know? Yeah. But I think over time, you know, the different stages of grief, you know, it came to my attention that not only was I unaware of like my true feelings on the matter, but I was unaware of the things that were like driving my everyday. I would succumb to massive panic attacks, where I would like be on the ground in public, just like in a ball, just like crying for no reason, just because I heard a phrase somebody said in passing where it related too much to my life at the time, or too much to the death or whatever. I would walk around the neighborhood and like punch my own hands. I would just be blasting Last Shadow Puppets just in my ears at like top volume, walking at full speed around the neighborhood at like 2 a.m. just like, yeah, just trying to like ground myself to the feeling. That's a vibe for sure. Is it right? Isn't that you know exactly what I'm saying because you can feel it. And I'm just like trying to get out of this because the panic attacks were so baseless for me. I was like, I don't understand. Like, why am I having these? And then I realized like, a lot of things. One, I realized that all my emotions were different degrees of anxiety. I didn't really know what it was like to be happy or excited or anything like that. Because even when I got excited, I was still freaking out about things. Like I would get panicked over it, not excited. I would be like, oh yeah, I can go, you know. I can kind of equate it to like when you go and you meet some star that you like, oh, you've always loved.
Sure.
And then you're like, I'll be cool. And then they show up and you just irrationally are like, oh my God. I'm like drooling on myself and I can't hold my hands straight as I'm trying to shake their hand, you know, sweating like a motherfucker. And it's like that where you're like, you think it's one thing and it's another. Right. And so it's panic for me at all times. And I realized that all my feelings were one feeling, just different degrees of that feeling, which brought me to the point of being like, well, what are feelings then? Like, what are feelings for me? Because if anger can be sometimes confused with super excitement, or being sad can be, you know, and withdrawn can be equated with being contemplative and, you know, and just self-thought, neither one's good or bad, then what the hell am I thinking about in terms of happiness and sadness or achievement versus failure, things like that? And that got me thinking about a lot of things. And then there was the fact that I actually was sad, that I was like grieving my dad, because if you're telling yourself you're not sad that your dad died, no matter how bad that relationship might have been at times, you're lying, because you always feel it. It doesn't mean that you agree with the feeling. It just means that you feel it. Right. And another thing I realized was like, that was super unhealthy of me to be doing that kind of like, you know, heavy metal, you know, self-punishment in, you know, the twilight hours. I realized like I'd been spending too much time doing that. I needed to really think about it and come up with some, you know, strategies. And that is around the time when I started writing a chant and started working on my own image. And at that time too, I was heavily bogged down with like everybody, like very like bittersweet. A lot of people were on the extreme ends of the spectrum in terms of reactionality and emotion following my dad's death. They were like, we love you, you're so cool, you look and sound and act just like your dad, you should be in the band. And oh my God, you didn't stop him from killing himself, you're just a fucking horrible person, I'll kick your ass, or you should go kill yourself. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, pick one. Do you love me or do you hate me? And it just happened to be that I was at the age where I was visible but not identified as my own person. And so I got a lot of that pressure, and I realized like, well, then I need to start carving out something for myself.
Well,
because I can't do that for fucking ever.
No, I can't imagine like and that's, you know, just listening to you and what you went through, it reminds me of the states that I got into in struggling with my addiction and where my mind went and almost, and when you talk about certain situations, you know, I don't know if you've looked into suicidal ideation, but it often happens.
Was highly,
Okay.
I was in deep.
So you know, with that too, like with addicts, we go through that stuff too. It's like, okay, I can get clean and I've tried that shit and it's not working, or I can keep using, which will eventually kill me, or I could just kill me. Or take my own life because I want out of this torture. And people don't realize the place that's so far.
That's what I talked to my dad about. That's great that you brought that up, because the last time I spoke to my dad one-on-one was about 6 months before he passed. And I had said, you know, a lot of I didn't realize that my psychological health was in such disarray, because I didn't know what psychological health was. I didn't know what mental health was. And all of it expressed itself physically in me. And so I would be like, you know, again, like the tremors and the rubbing and the pulling on things, I would self-harm by hitting myself. I didn't even know that was self-harming at the time. Because it comes to the point of like the body breaking down at that point where you're doing that. So I didn't even consider it something that was my choice that I did that. It was just a matter of like, I couldn't handle anything anymore. And so I just did whatever. My body was just like, you know, it's like when you poke a snake and it like it has reflexes, like it's exactly reflexive.
Where you are now may not be where you came from. The choices you make today may spiral out of control or spin you in the right direction. Discover a riveting, true story of how Carlos Vieira nearly destroyed his life and lived to tell about it. Stand up, stand firm, believe, make it happen, and live through the madness. knocking doors down along the way. And don't miss others telling their powerful stories on our podcast. Visit kddmediacompany.com.
What the hell were we talking about?
It's
gone.
The self-harming almost as a reflexive action.
What? No, you said something. What was it?
Gosh,
what was the last thing you said?
So much in common. I swear, we have a lot in common, bro.
And the thing is I have my answer. I just don't know what I was talking about.
Him and I will be looking at each other. And I'm like, fuck, I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well, I brought up like suicidal ideation, where it's like you
ideation,
got 3 choices.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes. I was speaking to my father. Yeah. So six months before he died, because these things. There you go. Because these things express themselves physically for me and not necessarily inside, which is a total bullshit, because once I realized that both were happening at the same time, it's pretty obvious, but at the time it wasn't obvious. I told him, I called him up. It was like one of our like better parts of our relationship. I called him up and I was like, I don't know what to do, because I suffer from so much anxiety and panic and indecision that I physically feel pain. Like I would have this throbbing in my chest, like my heart was going to collapse like every fucking day. And I realized like that had been my life every day, almost as far back as like probably when my mom popped me out. I don't know. I imagine it was something as far back as that. And I told him, I was like, I wasn't suicidal. I had suicidal ideation definitely at play in my life, but I wasn't suicidal. It's different to be like, I wonder what that's like versus I want to do that. Yeah. And I didn't even know that was something I did as a kid. I played a game called What If, where I would just like imagine the most like painful things happening to me, just like what it would feel like. And they all obviously ended in death, or it wouldn't be suicidal ideation. But or maybe that's too specific. I would like that. Let's just say that's what my thoughts were on it at the time. Sure. Not to like put too fine of a point on it, leave some room for interpretation and definition. But I told him that I was like, I'd rather not be here. Like if it means that I don't feel this way anymore, then I would rather it not feel that way anymore. I don't know what to do. So, and I told him, I was like, I'm not planning anything. I'm just saying my feelings. Like I'm hurting so bad. I'd like it for it to stop. I don't want medication. So do I die, or is there a different solution? Mm-hmm. And he was like, I don't know what to tell you. Sorry, buddy. And then 6 months for the entire 6 months following that, he never said a word to me. He actively avoided me. And then he was dead. And I was just like, oh my God, that's rough. So, and I don't hold it as a personal thing, because look what happens. He was going through a lot himself. So, it's like, I'm not even going to start to think about or assume like what he was going through during that period.
It's probably the and we can make assumptions, maybe the distancing because of where his mind was at, and without wanting vulnerability as well.
Fitting image here. I'm his clone pretty much, and the only thing is I actually, this haircut is not a choice, and I have a full-fledged beard which you could never grow. I had this at 13. You know how mad he was.
I'm 32. I still can't grow a beard. So
it's okay. I think the mustache is working, so I think
I appreciate it.
About the same. This started pretty early in life. Oh shit. Yeah.
No, I've looked like an unkempt gorilla for most of my life. It's been unfortunate. I mean, the harassment. Kids aren't nice, let me tell you.
Oh no, but they're fucking cruel, man.
Oh fuck yeah. Oh yeah, and then have a famous dad. Throw that into the mix.
Oh God, I can only imagine.
All of a sudden, you're at a school event, and 15 kids who refuse to hang out with you during recess are telling them that they're your best friend, and they just want autographs. Right. That kind of shit will fuck with you. That'll leave you a little scattered.
I could imagine. Yeah, you're an asshole to me now until it's circumstantial and you want to obtain something. I see how you are. Go fuck yourself.
Oh yeah, and it's crazy because you look them in the eye, you're like, bro, I literally asked you to play fucking tetherball with me 20 minutes ago, and you said no. And then you spit. No, I'm just kidding. It's bad. But you said no, and now you're telling him that all you ever do is think about me and how I'm your number one priority as a friend. Like, come on, man, give me a break. You're 10. That's a lie.
That's a lie. You need to go home and get more parenting. Fuck off.
Yeah, come on, man. Give me a break. No, you cannot ride the Ferris wheel with my dad.
Well, hey, thanks for being vulnerable there. My daughter was a big fan of your dad's work, and as many of fans, she's a young lady. She's only 12 now, but was hurt by it. And I had met your father once, haven't had a 20-year radio career. So appreciate you being open for that, because hopefully,
of course,
anyone that's tuning in on for whatever reason that they're really hearing,
nothing I'm going through is unique. It's not unique. Yes. And that's the thing. It's like, it doesn't matter whether my dad was a world famous Rock of Fame guy. It doesn't matter, because ultimately my situation is no different than Austin's. It's no different than yours. It's no different than anybody else. And that's the point of the body of work I'm building, is that, these things we shouldn't be anything but vulnerable with, and expect that reception, that same level of reception and openness, as we are vulnerable.
Yeah.
So Jaime, have you because backing up, I had no idea, but apparently my grandma had been on Valium her entire life, pretty much.
Oh,
my mom, she has anxiety on Xanax and stuff, so it's hereditary. And my sister and my dad, they have no idea what anxiety is. Oh, just calm down, you're fine. But for me, I have it. So I've actually gone and talked to a therapist and stuff like that, and it helps. So my question to you is, do you seek out professional help as well? Because I heard you say you didn't want to take anything or anything like that. So
I didn't want medicine. I didn't want to mess with my biochemistry in any capacity.
Sure.
Because that stuff not only has long lasting effects, but it can permanently mess you up if it's wrong. So
absolutely.
The whole I know there's a whole because I have friends who are medicated, they have to go through regimen shifts. So, it's not just trying one medication, it's trying a cocktail of medications over a long period of time, then cycling through another one and another one until you find something that works. But at that point, you kind of have to ask yourself too, well, then how much of me is just adapted to the medicine and how much of it is the medicine working for me? Sure. And so that's always been something that I've been mindful of, especially with addiction in my family. It's I don't want to get on these heavier drugs, these antidepressants and things, with the possibility of being addicted at any point. It's hereditary too, anxiety, addiction, all that stuff, depression. And so it's down to the cellular level. Toxic stress, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, The Deepest Well. Check that shit out. Easy book, beautiful. It's the first half of her career. And she talks about toxic stress, which is something that we're actually, Austin and I are working on with our next projects is toxic stress and how that permeates people. We'll get into that a little later, but wait, it's happening again. God damn, today's just not my day. Some days I could just, I could go and never get caught up. And some days there's a wall.
You were talking about medications in the context of changing your chemistry.
I don't know if you could believe that with how much I'm forgetting things, but I'm currently sober. I'm not on anything. Basically what my mind turned to is, I'm a huge David Lynch fan, and this might have actually come from him. I have no idea of knowing where it came from. I just embrace it for what it is because it's important. And when I found that when things happen like that, it's fine to ask questions, but it's also just fine to accept it. He practices transcendental meditation.
Yes.
Which is, I've never practiced TM, but I started realizing I actually resonate with a lot of the things he's saying. I also resonate with a lot of the teachings of meditative people in general, Buddhist monks and people of that stature, where I'm listening to their tenets and I'm that actually makes sense. I'm also watching TED Talks on toxic stress and the way the mind perpetuates itself and how OCD works versus I suffered with retro jealousy for a while, which if you don't know what that is, it's like an OCD of the mind, specifically geared towards past relationships that your partner has been in. So it just drives you crazy. Yeah. And part of that's part of the BPD too, but it's a specific thing in its own right, which maybe isn't exclusive at all. Who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's research done on it, or there will be at some point. But you know, those things are very difficult to navigate. And I realize like a lot of it comes from my inability to establish not just myself, but my own values and keep them stable no matter what the interference is. And my family is the definition of interference. It's a lot of people always trying to scramble communications, make things ambiguous, muddy things up. There's no clear line of thought, a lot of gaslighting and stuff like that.
Oh shit, I know that all too well.
Yeah, it's hard. And so when I realized that, I realized like, well, okay, so a lot of the ways that my brain is conditioned psychologically and in terms of chemistry, been conditioned to deal with situations is to constantly flip-flop and not really know what to do with information. And so my study became, well, how do I find a way to stabilize my internal psychological and biochemistry, you know, atmospheres? And how do I do that without medicine? And can I do it without medicine? And so then it became not only an interesting thought experiment, but something like a challenge. Like, okay, so most people don't do this because it's really, really difficult or impossible. So let's see how impossible it is, which is like super dangerous. And now that I know I have BPD, which I treated as depression for a while, now that I know I have BPD, I'm actually surprised that I didn't end up dying by suicide, because it's like the #1 cause of suicide in terms of mental conditions. It's one of the leading causes. Like most people with BPD consider life an inescapable prison that will the only way you'll get out is through more pain. And I've even spoken to people with BPD, and they're like, yeah, you're not supposed to do meditation because you ramp yourself up. Like you do all these things and like you'll end up feeding into your own delusions. And I'm like, dude, but did you ever sit down and think what your delusion was? You know? And that's where a lot of my health came from, is like understanding two things. Your stress response systems can be massively misaligned from the time you're born, or misaligned and then realigned and then misaligned multiple times throughout your entire life. So in terms of, you know, you may have a hereditary disposition, but it also comes down to, and that it might be something like bipolar, which is strictly chemical. Or it could be something like BPD, which is not strictly chemical, it's based in trauma. So you could be born with it, but it doesn't mean that it's something you have to equal out with chemical treatments, like something like bipolar. Instead, you can actually psychologically extract yourself from the situation. And that's what I've started doing more recently, is like looking into certain philosophies. Right now I'm studying the Yoga Sutras, which are excellent in realigning the brain and how we interact with ourselves, the society we're in, the world that we live in. So maybe you might want to check that out and see how that goes. Right now, it's a pain in the ass. I struggle constantly. At least 3 days a week, I have a nuclear meltdown. And that does not include my artistic fire. So those they sound similar, but they're not. and getting people to understand that though is a big deal too, is like understanding when I'm able to now say, well, I'm actually going through something right now versus, oh, I'm just sticking to my guns.
Yeah, that's a huge step.
Yeah. Oh, that was, yeah. And I mean, I have a partner who sticks by me no matter what. So it's like, I could like have a nuclear meltdown 3 days a week and just be like, okay, so we're still good. We're still going to watch My Name is Earl later, which we are watching right now. And it's phenomenal, by the way. I understand why Fox hated it. And I understand.
Absolutely love that show.
We both
Austin,
like.
have you seen that?
Yeah.
Have you seen My Name is Earl?
Oh, Austin.
What's that?
Have you seen My Name is Earl?
My Name is Earl.
Oh, no, I have not seen it.
Basically, it's about a guy who gets his life is intervened by karma. He's a bad guy. He does bullshit things to everybody all the fucking time. He gets hit by a car after he wins the lotto and he loses the lotto. And then he's like,
the premise of it.
and he's like, I am a fucking horrible person and I'm gonna do everything I can to make it up. And then the second he makes it up, he gets the lottery back. And then the show is like him dealing with the entity of karma.
And he has a list, right?
He has a list, yeah. And he has a list of things he has to make up for. And every episode's him making up for something.
Right.
It's so cool. It's so good. And it was on Fox, and NBC has the rights now. And I can understand why no episode on IMDb has a rating higher than 7.5, because they are so critical of the American society that we're in right now. There's a line, I brought it up in another interview because it's just that fucking good. They have the main black character on the show look at the camera and talk about voting.
Yeah, it breaks the fourth wall.
And I'm not being political, I promise. It's just a great timeless line, where, you know, they're like, hey, my dad's running for mayor. You want to help us vote? And he's like, yeah, I don't know about that. The GOP makes really bad decisions. And until the Electoral College is, you know, redefined, I don't feel comfortable voting for anything, because really anything I say doesn't matter. And he's just like looking straight at the camera, and you're like, oh my God. And every episode's like that. There's just some ethnic, like, you know, minority character who's just fucking like ripping the United States. And they're just like, you know, obviously Fox ditched it at some point, right? Because NBC has it. But
yeah, because really they just shut it the fuck down. Actually, it just was like,
yeah,
we're stopping.
It had 4 seasons and it was done, but it had a solid run. Every season had about 24 episodes. I think the last one has 27. And so they got the runtime. They just, and it's written by a guy named Greg Garcia. I mean, come on, Garcia, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
well, and Jason Lee, fun fact, is a former professional skateboarder. So
I fucking love Jason Lee. He's so
I love Jason Lee, dude. He's hilarious.
So cool. I don't think the Chipmunks movies were good, but I love Jason Lee.
Yeah.
I didn't care for the Chipmunk movies.
He killed it in the Kevin Smith movies for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's interesting you bring that up, because you know, I haven't not watched the show since it was first released, but the premise, and Mikey asked, the list, he really did almost have an attitude of the 12 steps that often people do with NAAA, and you know, the making amends and the changes.
He even fucks up. He even fucks up. There are whole moments in the show where he just relapses and he's just a horrible fucking dude. And then he's like, oh my God, that was crazy. I'm just crazy. That was crazy. Please forgive me. I'm going to go back to my list now. But there are like moments where he's like super altruistic, and then moments where he's just a total fucking wreck, and he's like purposefully burning the world down. And you're like, that's so relatable. Like, they're super honest about that, no matter how cartoonish or how satirical it is.
Because
but that's
all
exactly
have that
what
ability.
It is. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that one of my goals personally is understanding meditation, doing the Yoga Sutra work, going through these things, because that's also like my 12 step is like going through these and understanding the tenets and really practicing them, working them. I'm reading this book multiple times, like, you know, meditating on it, doing the actual yoga work, you know, and it is a practice. You do have to maintain yourself in it. And that's actually one of the interesting things about the show too, is that karma is not actually the way that it's been described by most people who describe karma. Karma in the yoga tradition is actually more defined, as my understanding goes reading this book, is that, and the guy's a PhD in Yoga Sutra, so I trust him. It's, you know, karmic intervention is not a godly force, although it can seem like one. What it is it's a deeply ingrained conditioned behavior that you're undoing, which is what karma is. The more you do something, the more likely you are to do it again, because you're conditioning yourself to be put in those situations, to have those reactions, to do that work. And so you can have positive karma, which is good work, like what Earl does with his list, or you can have negative karma, which is getting hit by a car and losing your lotto ticket.
Could you imagine?
Dude, that would be fucking horrible.
Could you imagine? God.
I've been hit by many cars, and it's not fun, and I definitely wouldn't want to be hit with a fucking lotto ticket in my hand.
Not the winning one.
Not the winning one.
But no, wow, you bring up that such a great point in karma. I think we've only ever discussed it one other time with the lady who was a yogi, but boy, thinking about it as it could relate or does relate to the 12 steps, or just in life in general, because one of those things is the utter honesty. And that's one of the things that really compelled me, Jamie, is that you're able now to recognize if you're kind of having an episode that you can let people know, because I got the honesty with myself, and now I can let the world know of what's going on. So it's kind of like, instead of where it could just shit on the whole situation, now people are going, oh, well, you know, he's a good dude. He's honest about it. He's just having a time. Cool, man. No judgment, you know.
Right. You can better appreciate someone's condition or situation when you understand that it's not personal and you can take a step back from it.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you remove yourself and you're like, wait. They're having an anxiety attack and they're screaming at me, or they're treating me in some weird way that has nothing to do with that person that I know of. Like, people change when they're in those situations, and that's why it comes off as a threat, right? That's why people are like, hey, what the fuck, dude? Why are you attacking me? And you're like, I'm not attacking you. Just freaking out. But it's like, that's why people take it so aggressively, is like, you don't, because it's not apparent that something has changed. It's more like, well, then you must have always felt this way, or you must have always been this way. And it's like, no, it's quite temporary. So just bear with me here.
5150 is power. The power to overcome, the power to persevere, the power to set your life on a course for success. When you're faced with the challenges life throws at you, you focus and do what is needed to go beyond what is required. So stand up, stand firm, believe, make it happen, and live through the madness, knocking doors down along the way. We are 5150.
During my attacks, I need to be alone. I don't yell, I don't get loud. I just need to be alone in a dark room. Give me 20 minutes. Just give me 20 minutes.
I never learned that lesson.
My thing. It's not like a way I cope. Well, I guess it is, but it's not like, okay, I'm acknowledging that I'm having an attack, I'm gonna go be myself. It wasn't like that. It was just like, I need to get away from everybody. That's why airplanes, I don't like airplanes. Not because I'm afraid the plane's gonna go down, just because I'm in this tight little spot for close. However long your flight is, and I can't just get up and walk away. You know what I mean? And if I do, I'm disturbing 4 other people to go to the bathroom or something.
Always get the aisle seat.
I know. For the sake of anxiety, get the aisle seat. But
Johnny, son of a bitch, likes the window. I know.
Yeah, so that's how it is. It's like, you need to but that's how I handle it. I just go be alone for just give me 20 minutes, and then I'm good. But
dude, and that's my problem, is I like to talk. I like to explain it. I don't like people thinking that I'm one way over another when I'm not, especially if it has nothing to do with them. So the reason I get loud is because I'm trying to talk to you about it.
No, I get it.
Which is super antithetical to the point, because I'm like, I'm trying to get you to understand, just screaming. And they're like, dude, well then why don't you just say it? I'm like, I am saying it. They're like, well, I can't handle this because now I'm being triggered. I'm like, oh fuck, well shit. All right, well, then I gotta fucking, which is why my practice is super helpful for me. The mindful meditation is where it started. Now I'm with Yoga Sutras, is that like ability to go, well, now I'm teetering, or now I noticed that I feel this way because of this thing that was said, or, whatever. Because then I can kind of go, hey, look, not a thing right now. It's not, I needed a second. And it's still hard for me to do that. And I've been trying for 3 years. It's fucking hard. It's like being addicted though, because I like the pain. I think a long time ago I realized that the pain was I confused it, right? Conflated it, because in my family pain is the norm. So I was like, well, then being in pain is the normal happy. So if I'm not, I found that too. The more I meditated, the more I was like, well, I'm peaceful right now. Yay, I'm at neutral. And all of a sudden my body's just like, hey bro, hey, did you remember to pay that bill? Hey, no, I know you just paid it. No, but did you want to check again? I don't know. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe you didn't get it.
Did you lock the front door when you left?
Did you lock the front? You know how many times I've had to I had to lock the door and go somewhere, and I can't go home and check again? God damn, that is hell. You want to know what hell is?
Is the oven on? Did I leave the oven on?
Yeah,
the garage door's closed, right? We closed it, didn't we? Could have sworn we did. Now I gotta go look.
You know what? I could just see, imagine poor Austin on a trip with us 3 guys, because it would be that we all live in different
I'm looking
areas.
At Austin, and I feel like this is hitting home. I don't know. I feel like he's being quiet, but
you're sparking a lot of chords, and I again.
He's like, please stop! You're triggering me. No.
Right. Yeah. But I you have all those thoughts too, where it does become addicting to sort of let your mind get carried with that, and really sort of lean into it at times. I can go through any experience and think, oh yeah, I want to continue feeling this way. It feels somewhat
because
euphoric.
It's a known, right? It's a known.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, if I know how it feels, then nothing else can take me off guard, because I know what I'm dealing with. Yeah, you don't even know what you're dealing with because you didn't ask yourself what you're dealing with.
And the people around you sort of look at you, and there's a certain perception about it where maybe they're not even aware of what's happening, but the way that you perceive it, you're sort of you're really kind of trying to rectify your situation in that sense, that, because what else do you have? I mean, it's a lonely journey we live on, and
absolutely.
the mind is extremely important to continue to educate yourself on, and learning through these experiences, and just through this small conversation. Again, I'm learning a lot from Jaime today.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's hearing things he's never heard before, but Austin's also heard things nobody else has heard before. We've had some very interesting conversation.
Sure.
Dude, it's so much fun to like grow. It's so painful, but like the second you get past it, like, dude, it took me like 2 years to like, I've been with my partner for a year and a half now, maybe a little longer. And I'm like, it's still like a month or two ago, it took me that long to accept that somebody just loved me, which is like crazy. Cause like the whole time you're like, I love you. Oh, I love you too. Oh, that's great. Like really into it.
Right.
And like, I guess, it just never occurred to me that I wasn't truly accepting it. I was always expecting like a backhand with it. And once I realized that, things changed. Right. And then on top of that, like it took me forever until one time in one of my episodes, I was like, I'm saying something to you right now, so you'll respond. And they were like, I knew it. You've been doing that since the beginning. And I was like, no, I haven't. And they're like, yes, you have. And I had to think about it. And I was like, oh shit. That's what my mom used to do to me all the time. Of course, I've been just perpetuating it. And then, part of dealing with your anxieties and your conditions and stuff like that is like admitting that you're wrong and being okay with like just being wrong. Like it's fine to be wrong. It's okay. It sucks. It can suck, especially if you say or do something that's a bit pretentious or maybe a bit all consuming. Because then you have to admit that you were kind of being fucked up for a second. But like that's still important.
I love being wrong. I think it's
right. Isn't it fun?
It's one of the first things that I bring up in any conversation. If I feel that I'm any which way that I'm wrong, I will admit to the situation immediately, because it helps deflate things, but also it gives you a sense of like, I'm not really all that important, we're sort of
in the large scheme,
all kind of guiding through this thing. And it's, it's a daily living experience to just continue growing. That's
you're going to be wrong all the time. And in fact, if you're living right, you should be wrong all the time, because you should be allowing new information in, you should be allowing new experiences to happen. And that's something I think that's really important to understand too, is like, with the work that like say Austin and I are doing, we're always looking for the next step forward, like how, not only in terms of artistic quality of ourselves, but like what changes us as people, because we're doing some stuff right now where this stuff's like hard to look at, but it needs to be said, it needs to be done. And with that being said, you were saying, I think everything we've been saying is to say that everybody shares an experience, even if we don't see it that way. And that's part of the work too, is like normalizing the conversation, normalizing the vulnerability too, is like a chant is all metaphorical. And as much as it is, sorry, I just got a burst of pollen in my face. How nice is that? It's a gift from you guys. Thank you.
You're welcome. We just blew it down. Now you know how we felt.
That was incredible accuracy. No, but it's really important to be able to be open with people. And I think too, one of the things I got with the chant in terms of the reception is a lot of people were like, I don't know if I'm willing to say I have a condition, or willing to say if I deal with, say, strict depression or anxiety or panic or any of these things. But what I do deal with is isolation. And I think you nailed it with the isolation, because I understand it. Like, even if I'm not paranoid schizophrenic, or if I'm not like always manic, I still understand, like, I'm inside right now and it's a global pandemic. I can't go anywhere. And if I go, I can't see people's faces, which is like your number one social criteria for interaction, because you can't tell what somebody's saying, thinking, or feeling if you can't see them. And so it becomes a different thing. And then, on top of that, people are like now dealing with something that they always have had to deal with, but they never took the time to, so they're stuck inside. you can be addicted, you could be literally just dealing with yourself and facing yourself head on. And that's incredibly difficult for people, you know? And the more we talk about it, the more we're open about it, and it becomes like a fun thing like this, where we're like, yo, you suffer from, you know, craziness too. I'm crazy.
Yeah.
You're
crazy, so am I. Get the fuck out.
Yeah. You know, there's a kinship in it. And I think it's important, especially with my work. And I said this before too, it's like a chant doesn't show solutions. It doesn't. It just shows where I was at the moment.
Right.
And I didn't have solutions then, but now I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Disorder of a day in the life of somebody who lives in that experience, and that's probably the majority of the work that's been happening thus far. You do take on that day in the life aspect where it could just be a normal conversation, and it could lead different ways in which you're discussing it and the way that each character is perceiving it. But ultimately, I personally think that a chant was really just the day in the life of the constant array of issues that you're going through mentally, and how are you able to overcome those barriers if you can, or do you continue your it's a really tough suffering that you have to go through in those day-to-day experiences, and a lot of it does feel timeless in the way that it's being orchestrated because of its disorder. And it's been an interesting ride.
I remember you know, one of the things that Austin and I originally talked about was, you know, there was a big conversation on intent. Well, what's the intention behind this line? What's the intention behind this action? And I had to explain to him, like, well, there is no intent. And he's like, well, how do I act non-intent? I'm like, well, you know, that's a good question. And you know, because he doesn't deal with what I deal with, and at the time, of course, he didn't know I was putting a lot of my experience into it. I'm not paranoid schizophrenic, but I've had schizophrenic tendencies since I was a child. I mean, like I said, I was so wound up that when I smoked pot, I gave myself seizures. So like, you know, imagine that kind of like pent upness. And so I couldn't even tell you like how much of my life was in the film at the time, because I was so close to it. But like, again, I saw the last cut and I was like, holy shit, like my partner's not going to want to watch this. You know? Like, Bella's not going to want to do that, because she's going to be like, well, I'm just watching you do your thing. It's just Austin wearing you as he's, you know, you're just wearing Austin as a mask. I'm like, dude, just chill. She didn't say that. I said that. But, you know, that's pretty much how it came down to it. And having to explain myself at the time was so weird, because I did have an idea, but I didn't even equate it to myself. And then trying to explain to Austin what a mental breakdown was without even knowing that I suffered from mental breakdowns was like so fascinating. I think,
well,
I mean,
there's only so much words that you can say about it. I think the way that you describe it, it always makes sense to me. I'm always like, okay, that I can lean in that route. And, you know, it's so funny. Again, I talk about the preparation, but it really does boil down to like, what's going to be happening in the moment, because then I start to relive as if it's your experience, where and I'm not fully aware of it. You know, it's the way that you've drawn into the piece and saying, you know, this is its space to be, you know, given its closure, and ultimately you don't really know what's going to happen. So let's see what you can do here, like in action, you know. And
well, there was also a matter of rehearsal. The way that we did it was very interesting, because there's only one scene where Austin's with anybody else but himself, and that's with Aaron Ford, who plays the character of Brother. And I when we last saw each other, Austin and I, in person, he was like, yeah. And then Aaron was like over in the corner, like fucking slapping himself around, and what the fuck's up with that? And the thing is like, we did our whole thing together, basic blocking and lines and delivery. And then I took them separately and gave them individual narratives and gave them things that the other person didn't know about. And then had them approach it from a standpoint that, you know, in an individual standpoint instead of a group standpoint of, well, this is a conversation. And so, you know, Aaron comes in and he's all like, well, I've been tasked with extracting information from Austin, so I'm beating myself up literally over the fact that I'm like farming my brother for information and like only adding to his sickness. Whereas like Austin would never fucking know that. Austin just read the script and it's just like his brother like, hey, where's the car? Where's the house? Like, were you fucking like lazy or something? And like, that's what it comes down to, and him trying to defend himself. On the other hand, Austin, I'm like, you know, you got to think about the character where you're at. You have no idea what time and space is. You're totally in flux all the time. Everything is reactive for you. You're scared of everything. You trust nothing. And then on top of that being like, oh, by the way, you're not allowed to sleep, really. And you're going to be confined mostly to literally a single spot for most of these shoots, these shots that we're doing. So you can understand what it's like to be not only isolated, but also like immobile. And then to have like no fucking clue what this other person is doing. Right. And that's exactly what came out in his stories on set, which is like, he's over there like freaking the fuck out. What is that about? And like, he has no idea. And it's only adding to the confusion and the energy there.
Well, and the only way for me to describe that is just right now is basing it off of like a theme park ride. Like, I don't know what I'm going to see. And the fact that you have these sort of, excuse me, the fact that you have all these sort of players, you know, instigating these different things on me, you know, I would have never known that, you know, and you don't bring those things up to me. Like and that's the form of transparency where
that may be the first time that he's ever heard that.
And, you know, the way that I'm sort of gliding through it as well, like I have my own things to deal with, as well as Aaron, as well as Jamie when it's on set. And, you know, it's all just very personal. And I think that's what Jamie's so good at when we're really calming ourselves and doing it, because, you know, acting, it feels sort of pretentious in its onset, but it's because of the fact that you're trying to pry open what you really are and what you're doing, and your self-awareness is sort of being just completely unblocked, and you have to do the bare essentials. It's like a caveman, you know, trying to light a fire. You know, you don't even know what it is yet. You know, even just being on set yesterday, I was under these disastrous conditions. I mean, it's like 40 degrees. It's windy, like extremely windy.
Yeah,
and
I know exactly.
I'm like sitting here kind of prying the scene, and I'm having to think about it the whole time, because in all actuality, I'm just freezing. And I don't really I don't really have a sense of like what my character's doing. It's really based on like it's really fucking cold. And you just have to get it done, like no matter what. And I feel like that's so true to how just our life is run, though. If I was really outside in that freezing cold weather, I would feel the exact same way and be like, man, I can't be here right now. I don't want to be here. I have no desire for this. But that doesn't come down in the script, you know. It starts out as just being sort of this
you have to actually live it.
Exactly. And
you have to embody it.
So that's what's so fascinating about movie making in general, is just the constant fantasy that you put yourself in. And again, it's just a real complete realness. real complete
realness. I like that. We should get that. We should get a shirt. Appreciate people and real complete realness.
Well, and you nailed it, Austin. For people that don't understand or maybe underappreciate acting in any sort of form, is that yes, it's this fantasy thing, but you have real conditions, and you're trying to be absolutely true to this fantasy thing. And of course, in this kind of a project, to let people know who have experienced none of these things with mental illness, exactly what it's like, and go make it easy. It's like, fuck you. It is
it's rough. And I remember Austin being like we'd have to get him amped up, because a lot of these shots are like mid emotion in the film where he's already like, you know, freaking out. And so you have to like, you can't, there's no easing into it. You don't just go, okay, action, we'll give you 10 minutes to warm up. Although we did it off screen, we can't do it on screen. And so just because of the way the shots were listed, and that might be something I have to think about in the future. But but I asked Austin to do a lot, like to really embody that chaotic thing. And I even like orchestrated things down to like, he knew Aaron Ford, like they're pretty good friends at a younger age, and he hadn't seen Aaron in a while. And I just was like, hey, Aaron, you're coming in. And he's like, cool, I can only do it for a day. And I was like, perfect. Don't really talk to Austin. And to have that that like moment of like trying to reconnect and it not fully like, you know, going in or like having the ability to even do that. It's like, I know it's a bit manipulative, but that is what we're there for. And the characters are literally living out those events in the script. So there's even more of like a level of like discombobulation. And I think Austin took a real fucking leap with me, because I literally met him at a cafe through a friend and went, yeah, I have no work. I have nobody to speak of in terms of like my art. I'm out of college. I am broke as fuck. I'm going to make a movie about paranoid schizophrenia. Do you want to be in it? And the industry, you know, the indie film industry is like, you get promised these things and then you don't do them. Yeah. Or you do them in such poor conditions, you never want to do it again. And he was like, yeah, dude. And I was like, cool, trust me. And then, you know, for somebody to take that like leap into, you know, unwittingly into a crazy person's territory where he's trying to express things, it's pretty cool, you know.
But here's the reality is that you're not focused into the unknown of what it is. I feel like every time I've had a conversation with Jaime, I just sort of scratch my head and think, man, can we really do this? Like, does this really make sense? And every time there's some form of plan or execution that's being brought up and backed, where I feel so sure of it in the moment, and it doesn't really matter what I think of it, you know, because at the end of the day, like he has these ideas and sort of plans to take out that I'm not fully aware of. So again, it's just this mental journey that I go through every day. And, you know, as of these 2 years so far, it's been a ride. I keep saying that, and I know I keep saying that, but it's true. And
yeah, he had no idea. He had no idea who I was, by the way. Like when I say like we met through acquaintances, I mean, like I said, I need to cast something. And one of our longtime friends, mutual friends, was like, I know somebody who just moved here too. Oh. And so
well, and that's the thing too, is I like knew of your background, but like I'm not like I was never a big fan of Linkin Park, so I never even understood like
how
I
dare
knew
you?
Jaime in the
well, you mean Linkin
but,
fucking Park? You weren't a fan? Come on.
Right.
You and your tastes and opinions that are all your own. God.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. God, quit being autonomous, dude. I can't handle it.
How dare you?
but Jaime's just always been so interesting, and I never really had the two connect. I just never even put that to face, because it doesn't really matter to me. It's never really. Yeah. It's been really fun, and again, as I continue listening, I'm just having these experiences where I'm like, wow, like Jaime, that's crazy. Like, how did you pull that out? Like, you know, it's a lot of things of books and scriptures that he finds where I'm just, you know, I'm enthralled, I'm enthused. So.
Well, we're actually working on something right now, which I think pertains to the same thing we've been talking about, which is mental health and the understanding of human beings. And I mentioned this in my Instagram live. I don't know if anybody listening now is, you know, following me on Instagram or any of my social media, but I do some lives, and I explained, you know, we're working on a proof of concept for a feature film that we want to do. And basically Austin and I collaborated on this film called Crimson River. Do you want to describe it, Austin?
Yeah. It was just something I had wrote a few years back, more towards high school. I just had this general idea, but it's kind of just this brother riding through his turmoils of grief as he loses somebody he loved, but he didn't really have any choice to express that in any capacity. And it's sort of just taking place in this small modern day Western town. And he's just kind of going through the motions of, you know, why do I not feel a sense of loss or grief to this person? And what are my thoughts really dictating as I'm sort of continuing my ride in this town? It's just been something I've really kind of been hung up on, because I remember more towards high school, I was really kind of going through those same issues where I was constantly looking behind me, and I was like, I really shouldn't be doing this because it's not helping me in any way. But yet that's what's clouding my thoughts. And it's not even bringing me to a moment to have a conversation where I'm there, you know? So, and we all have those same issues, but so I just kind of like put that into paper, and you know, it's been a very small idea, and thanks to Jaime, it's become this sort of living thing again, where it's I don't even know what it is yet, and that's the best part about it too. It's like, you know,
discovering what it is.
Exactly, the full form of discovery is essential to this, and again,
I think it's like, it's not knowing what it is. I think specifically for Austin, and if I'm being presumptuous, please, you know, let me know, because, you know, this is, you wrote this off your own experiences, so, you know, what I did was just revised it and you know, helped you put the nail in the coffin, so to speak. So, you know, this is yours, and what I think it is that we all know what it is. We know what the film is. It's about a brother who is bogged down by the trials and tribulations and conditionings of his family, which they don't have his best interest in mind. And he's in the self-imposed isolation because his brother is using his acquired influence to do bad things. And he's disparaged because of it. And I think what more to say about it in context of Austin is like, not necessarily, I don't know what's going on, but I don't know how I'm going to embody it, because it is such a close to home situation, but also something foreign enough. Because that's really what he's doing, as his character is being totally in denial of the death of his brother for a long time. And people are even mad at him for not even addressing the fact that his brother was killed. So it's like, you know, but then he doesn't feel anything towards like, hey, I need to explain that to somebody. And so it's a Western, but it's a neo-Western in the sense that almost all tropes of the Western have been completely inverted. We have a cast of LGBTQ plus members at the front as side characters, the friend group that Richard Black keeps around. We have a protagonist who's not going to revenge his brother, which has been a criticism of ours, is that our Liam Neeson character didn't get back on that revenge too quick. They're like, but where does he shoot people? And you're like, he's not going to shoot people. He's a fucking real dude. Dude's not, you know, if your brother gets killed by a gang, you don't take on the whole fucking gang. That's taking shit.
Yeah, and Charles Bronson. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's not realistic. So our goal here is to, you know, create something realistic and in terms of its perception of grief and the human character, and how you can have all of these seemingly disconnected moments and still be more connected than the people who are criticizing you for being disconnected. Because ultimately the character of Richard Black is very intelligent and very introspective and has a very solid ground for what he's doing and how he's doing it. He's just not accepted in a social sense. And I think a lot of people go through that, where like, you know, something happens and they respond differently than what's expected of them. And then people are like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? You know, you should be doing this. And they're like, but I don't feel that. Am I supposed to fake it? You know? And so right now we're working on a proof of concept that takes place a little under 3 years before the feature length film, following, you know, Richard, our protagonist, on the eve of the night where he decides to enter that self-imposed isolation. We get to see the things that lead up to it, the social contexts, whether it was his fault or somebody else's fault, or what, you know, what the motivation was behind saying, fuck all of you, I'm doing my own thing. And that's, you know, Austin is Richard Black. So, you know, we're just trying to keep it as honest as possible, as Austin as possible.
For those watching and listening, of course, click in the description. We do have the links not only to information and to check out Chant, but also these gentlemen on social media. Gentlemen, when we wrap up, we like to leave the guests with the last word and some words of positivity, especially that we focused on mental health in this area. But we do random questions first. Are you guys ready? We'll ask you each the same question.
Always ready. Always ready.
Up to you, Mike. Go first.
What is your guilty pleasure, or if you have any?
Austin, why don't you go first? Guilty pleasure.
Eating ice cream. It's a really guilty pleasure.
What is that? You mean eating food is your guilty pleasure, man?
No, but more so in the sense that I feel horrible every time I have to buy it, because it's like it really is like it's addicting. I'm like, I gotta stop eating it. But I buy it in pints, so I know that I'm like trying to conserve my amount.
You don't buy the big old drums of them.
The Costco size fucking drum. Just find that. Austin sitting in the corner. I had to play a guy with mental health issues. Oh.
Right. Just sugared out. Like
I had ice cream last night. I get you.
So did I. Yeah. Well, look at us.
I got kids, you know.
I'm the other one.
Right. I had some fucking ice cream.
We just like eating ice cream.
Right.
No, I have a sugar addiction, so I understand that 100%.
What about you, Jamie? Guilty pleasure of any
guilty
sort?
Pleasure? Is there guilty about? Oh, hold on. I'm gonna think about that for a second. Guilty pleasure. I'm feeling so many eyes here. I don't know.
That's all. Look away.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe I obsessively intake things that I love, and I like repeatedly just don't shut the fuck up about them. And I also like will consume repeatedly. So I would say my guilty pleasure is obsessing over things that probably shouldn't be obsessed over. If anybody's ever heard me talk about Dune, that's one of them.
Well, I heard you
Legion, that's one of them.
I heard you mention Lynch, and I was like, maybe a Dune guy.
Oh, I love Dune. I'm on the 4th book right now. God Emperor is some heady shit. But no, I'm a huge fan of David Lynch, and he's actually someone that I have obsessed over. I've seen the whole Twin Peaks Return 18-hour extravaganza probably 4 times all the way through, and I want to watch it again before I head off on the road here, because I'm gonna live on the road for a little bit. I don't have a DVD player, so what the fuck is that? But no, I get obsessive. I love it. I love finding people with big things to say and then really just committing to them. Again, 40 Stephen King novels. I've read like 5 Haruki Murakami novels, which just sounds like a little, but Haruki's got a big ass body of work, and everything he does has like 40 million different interpretations. So it's pretty dense. You know, Noah Hawley is one of my big guys. I fucking love Fargo and Legion and everything Noah Hawley does. I will not shut up if I get started. So I would just say obsessing over things that I find interesting is my guilty pleasure, because I do it daily.
Deep dive of binging.
Jason, you're up.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. This is always a fun one. Austin, favorite curse word?
Ooh. I do use fuck a lot. Yeah. That would be a good one. It's the best one.
It's so really versatile.
The strongest
one. It
one.
really is.
It is the strongest one. So it's like the most explicit, I feel like.
Well, and it can be said in so many different ways, like fuck or fuck. You know what I mean? Like it's so What do they say?
It can be pain, it can be happiness, it can be excitement, it can be total fucking misery. It could be hungry. Totally full.
You could just really want ice cream. Fuck.
I need that. Or oh my fucking God, I can't put any more on this body. You know?
Snickers ice cream. Fuck.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Jamie. Same one.
Immediately cunt comes to mind. I think cunt is an excellent word. It has that syllabic punch. It's the T and the C at the beginning, the cunt part. That just really fucking gets people every time.
It's really aggressive.
Yeah. It's really aggressive. It's those consonants. And so it's great. It's not as versatile as fuck, but if you say cunt, you know that person meant it. You know that's reserved. And the thing is like, I love the word fuck. I say shit and fuck all the time. I was raised by a rock star. I have the mouth of a fucking trucker. I keep it relatively wound down just in case people are sensitive to it. But generally I don't give a shit. And there are certain words which are just multifaceted, like shit, fuck, or Jesus Christ. That's a good one. But if you say cunt, you know that you fucked up. You know that somebody's in trouble and that person is absolutely livid. And I don't use it a lot, you know?
Oh yeah.
There are very few times I even use it in a joking capacity.
It's a powerful punch, especially if you put behind like some sort of like European accent, like, oh, you wee fucking cunt, get over it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like it's
Scottish
like, it's on.
I feel like that's the way that was actually meant to be said.
Right.
I can't do it now, and I won't try because I'll embarrass myself. But I have been known to be very good at a Scottish accent at some distant point in my life, and cunt was one of the best things. It feels nice.
Right.
It feels good.
It just flows in the moment. All right, Mikey,
no
what do you got?
arguments with cunt feels nice. I totally agree with that. All right. If you were stuck on a deserted island, what one movie and one album would you guys bring? One movie and one album. I know. When we came up with this, we're like, oh, this one's going
to go first.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go first, but I will ask a question in return.
Sure.
What are the specific parameters of a film, a movie? Because technically the return is 18 hours. That's a movie cut up into pieces because it had to be aired on television, not because of any other reason. So
you can go with it.
That'll work.
Like a mini series, does that count?
We'll allow it. Mini series works.
Mini series, okay.
But if you pick Star Wars, it's only one.
Yeah, right.
And it's not going to be episode 1, 2, or 3.
Are you kidding me? You don't like Attack of the Clones?
Actually, I'm a huge Star Wars nut. My hobby's building Star Wars Legos. It keeps me out of trouble, and I love them all. I
just had a long ass conversation about how George Lucas is an asshole because somebody had to go in and flesh out the rule of 2 for the Sith, and I had to explain how badass the Sith actually are based on philosophy. It's not fun when you have to do it and you're the only one who gets it.
Yeah, well, I would have backed you up on that. Anyways, all right. So one movie can be a mini series or, done in the series, and album.
I get a little nostalgic when I say this. So I would probably say The Wizard of Oz being the movie, and then the album probably being All That You Can't Leave Behind, U2.
Oh, nice.
U2?
Why Wizard of Oz?
Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
Why Wizard of Oz? Because I'm getting that there's like a mom and dad like family thing, or like grandma or something. Because there's a reason you're saying Wizard of Oz.
There's definitely a rewatchability to that film. Obviously, I mean, it's been such a historic thing to have happened, and I don't know. The color schemes, the performances, the music that's in it, it's so intrinsic in just who I am, I guess. I think there's just a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of excitement filled to it, even though obviously the history behind it was very detrimental. Sure. I just have a close belonging to that film because of the subject that plays into it, the fantasy of it. That's probably my thoughts. And then All That You Can't Leave Behind is just another type of album where I think I was probably around 6 or 7. That was replayed in the house a lot. And our family's a huge fan of U2. And we've just continued to watch their stuff. So that's
so you're not mad. You're not mad that Apple forced that on everybody.
No,
you thought it was Christmas for you.
Unfortunately, yeah, I was very thrilled to have that, and I had a lot of conversations. Obviously, how could you? Like, why would you believe in this? It's like, you guys, like, I'm just enjoying a free album, That's all.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. No, I appreciate your honesty, Austin.
What's yours, Jamie?
Yeah, Jamie,
I don't know. I'm thinking about it, and I always say that Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by the Arctic Monkeys is my favorite album of all time. But I've also been doing them a disservice to a certain degree because I've been just diving headfirst into Pink Floyd.
Oh, I love Pink Floyd.
And they're so fucking good. It's really hard to be like picky, even just with the album that I like the most, because they're all so well-rounded. But like, whereas I love Tranquility Base and Hotel and Casino for the fact that it is whimsical and imaginative, and I feel like a free, like totally free embodiment of creativity and authentic to Alex Turner. I think the same can be said to Roger Waters,
Sure.
So I'm listening to The Wall right now and really diving into that, which is just a fucking phenomenal look at society in such a broad sense that it doesn't matter what country you're from.
Yeah.
And he's right about a lot of things. I don't care how bad his attitude was. I don't care if he spit on his fans. I don't care. He's really, really good. And he's a
even
genius.
assholes bring up good points.
Well, but the reason he was an asshole, in my opinion, is because what he was saying was true and he was trying to deal with it himself.
Sure.
And he was suffering. So I feel like at this moment in time, given the material that I'm working on and given the thing that I'm trying to get to in my career, I would say that Dark Side of the Moon is a seminal piece of literature. I cannot stop listening to it. Every time it's just right. And The Wall is really good, but I do actually really, really, really appreciate Wish You Were Here as like a refined piece. I mean, it's like 40 minutes long versus an hour and 30 minutes.
Pretty certain that somebody did a YouTube video on playing The Dark Side of the Moon with the Wizard of Oz, and it timing perfectly. And then when they first get into Oz, Money starts playing when they first get into Oz, and
that's so cool.
Yeah,
see, and that's the thing. That album specifically, it's set at such a, because when you're in it, the energy, it makes it feel so much quicker and more, like energetic than it is.
Yeah,
it's purely because of the way it was performed. It feels like it's something different when you listen to it from front to back. You don't realize how slow the album actually is. And it's at that beats per minute where like you just, it's meant to reflect the heartbeat, or that reflective like 75 to 85 beats per minute, which is roughly where your heart sits when you're resting. And so you tune into it naturally. And then on top of that, you put it on top of anything, and it always times out perfectly to whatever you just put it against. I was watching nature docus with this album on in the background, and when these like big, like dramatic, they're like hippos coming out of the water and like flashing the water off their head, just like birds like chasing wolves and shit. And you're like, it's like breathe in the air. You're like, okay, well, this is just it. Not only is it fucking hilarious, but it's incredibly good comedy where it's not demeaning to anybody. It's not at the expense of anybody. It's just good. So I would say Wish You Were Here or Dark Side of the Moon at this moment would be my two top picks. I know that's not the question, so I'll say Dark Side of the Moon because it's more general. And then my favorite film, honestly, too many. I have too many. Because I enjoy everything to the fullest. So like when I see somebody's work, I'm just like, dude, you're just fucking great. And it's more of an appreciation of the person. So it's hard to rip that work out as a specific thing of like, I like that more. But I would say the thing that made me feel the best, that like made me like teary eyed and shit, is either the Steven Universe companion film between Steven Universe, The Proper Show, and Steven Universe Future with Spinell. That shit made me cry. I don't know why. Steven Universe always cuts to my soul and makes me realize like everything's okay, and it hurts sometimes to realize that movie. Never cried during a cartoon. I cried during this cartoon. But I would actually say that Maniac as a miniseries was my most heartfelt choice, because the ending is so heavy in the sense that it's so liberating. Because at the end of the thing, you're like, are they going to be a relationship in terms of like boyfriend girlfriend, or are they going to like be romantically involved, or is she not real, or like what's going on? Because you're in this like emotional psychological turmoil with these characters, and then it just comes down to, I'm getting you out of this place because I know you deserve better, and I know that you didn't have the best shot at life, so we're going to try to have a better shot together, and it doesn't matter what that costs me because I care about you, and I'm going to do that with you. And that to me is like the thesis of everything that I've ever done and will continue to do in terms of work. So
love it.
That's every time I watch it, I get like, oh, it's so cool, yeah. Go guys, go.
Oh, shit. But
awesome. Yeah, my answer.
Excellent.
My long-winded answer. You got the full answer.
Got the full thought. Thank you for laying it all out. No, it's giving the full thought process. Austin, having kind kind of your final word, tackled such an interesting project with Jaime, diving in and gaining more of an understanding of mental health. What kind of positive words can you lend to anyone or individuals, maybe someone in their family that struggled with any sort of mental health issues? And yeah.
I think my message is, that's a tough question. I know.
I'm interested.
I think at the end of the day, everything's going to be okay. And that's kind of the notion I try and ride as having my anchor to sort of facilitate that. And it means a lot of things, but that's sort of the general sentence I use when thinking about it, because life's so interesting in its positive and negative ways. And, the more that you're experiencing things, the more that you're realizing how stupid you really are. I mean, I don't know. I think that's the biggest precedent, is like, we don't know a lot about this, so everything's going to be okay. And continue enjoying life to the fullest, for sure.
Absolutely. Jaime, what about you?
Always going to be growing, and you're always going to be, Oh, that's pretty much it. I'm tagging on to that. Everything is new if you want it to be, and you just have to try hard enough. And it, as long as you keep trying, everything will work out just fine. If you want examples, I'm a prime example. I've been just trying over and over again. I can't tell you how many times I failed. I can't tell you how many times I hurt somebody. But what matters is not, what you're doing now. It matters where you're going to be. It's a journey. And as I wrote for Austin the other day, in this proof of concept, the identity of the whole is the sum of its parts, not its individual pieces. And so you can go about doing a bunch of things that you may not appreciate now, but you will appreciate later. And it's just a matter of the fact that he's right. We don't know a whole lot about the human psychology yet. We might think we do, but we've been looking in the wrong places, and now we're looking in the right places. So definitely. It's a new frontier. You've got to be open to change, open to the flow. Everything is fine, and it will be okay. And just because it's Haley Williams, she's Paramore. She says, if there's resistance, make it your friend, because that's the truth of the matter. Is like, you learn from every single thing you do, and even if something turns out wrong, there's still a lesson in there.
Right.
And as long as you're prepared to understand that and not take yourself too seriously, I think everything's going to turn out just fine.
Austin Gold, Jaime Bennington, go ahead.
I wanted to thank you guys for even having this podcast too. Like, I think you guys are having a lot of great conversations with people, and the topics at hand that you're going through. It's an extremely important thing. And, I think especially now in today's society, it's become paramount. And I think we're learning to understand that. And again, just showing my appreciation for you guys. I think it's a really good thing you got going on here.
Well, thank you
for that. Appreciate
that. That means a lot to us. It's really just two jackasses who've been through, varying shit. And we just try to show people that, hey, as we've done this podcast, I've learned recovery isn't just related to addiction. It's, it's mental health, it's physical health.
Yeah.
It's so many different things that constantly in life, we're going to have these challenges. And like you said, Jaime, I always loved the saying there are no losses, only lessons and victories. And, and we all go through recovery, and recovery isn't going backwards to a way, but it's moving forward. And how do we continue to thrive? And, we're just two guys that like to have a lot of fun in that reality, and be like, we can take this shit too serious, or we can have a good sense of humor and just,
or we can laugh about it.
Exactly.
We can make it's Linkin fucking Park jokes.
I was going to say, Austin, I'm surprised that album To Take on the Deserted Island wasn't Linkin Park for you. I kind of thought that's where it was.
Yeah, man. I mean, come on.
I mean, what did I do there
so much? I don't understand. No, I'm super grateful too for this, and I try to put that gratitude into words as much as possible. So if it didn't come across before in our correspondence, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. I appreciate the openness for which you've received us with, and for keeping everything so fun. This is probably one of the more fun conversational things I've done. This is cool. I like it.